Well, for the world's 2 billion Christians, today is a very special day. Good Friday is one of the holiest days on the calendar. In Jerusalem, pilgrims followed in what they believe were the last steps taken by Jesus Christ before he was crucified. The 14 Stations of the Cross began where he was condemned to death and ended inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the faithful believe he was buried. Pope Benedict marked Good Friday in unprecedented fashion. He embraced technology as he held his own version of a phone-in television show. This 7-year-old from earthquake-battered Japan asked the Pope why she had to suffer so much. He said he had the same questions and didn't have any easy answers. Well, let's turn back to the election now. And it's not often you ask a question and get 1.5 million answers. But that's how many responses we've had to Vote Compass. Canadians using the online tool have learned a bit about the party's positions and a bit about themselves. Now they can learn a bit about each other. Here's Aaron Saltzman with some of the trends researchers are finding.
Canadians, it seems, could not resist clicking on Vote Compass, the overwhelming response generating an unprecedented amount of information.
It's the largest data set of Canadian public opinion ever generated in the history of this country. This is the average position.
The online tool was designed to show Canadians how their views line up with those of the political parties, but it also gives a broad sense of where people in this country stand on many issues. And there are 3 issues on which respondents appear to be particularly polarized. Most either strongly disagreed or strongly agreed with the notion that the long gun registry should be scrapped.
It turned out to be enormously expensive for a very small problem.
There was also very little middle ground on the question of whether all Canadian troops should be immediately pulled out of Afghanistan.
They should not have been there in the first place.
And respondents were equally divided on the idea of cutting the federal budget, even if it leads to fewer public services.
Social spending should not be cut down.
The contrast also notable when comparing responses from Quebec to those from the rest of Canada, and not just on sovereignty, on accommodating religious minorities, for example.
In Quebec, we see much less support for accommodation of religious minorities than we see among respondents in the rest of Canada.
This in spite of the fact that Quebec respondents' views on immigrants in general were similar to those of the rest of Canada. There was also one issue on which people across this country appear to be united. In their answers, the vast majority support the suggestion that terminally ill patients should be able to end their own lives with medical assistance. Vote Compass is not scientific. It was meant to educate, inform, and engage. It's a snapshot, a fascinating glimpse inside the minds of Canadians. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Toronto.
Vote Compass pointed us to this next story that we also touched on earlier. It's about whether students are engaged in this election.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about Senate reform?
Don't worry, there are lots of issues that do matter to them. And Adrian Arsenault heads to the far north, where the campaign is competing for attention with this. Plus, new details about the ceremony of the century. That's all coming up on The National.
Put a price on
voters.
This is my first year voting. I just turned 18 last year, and I'm just really excited about exercising my rights.
This can help make a difference. It's worth every second of me being here on a holiday.
Those are just some voters we spoke to today. In this election campaign, we issued the challenge to find out where you stand by trying Vote Compass. We already know the turnout has been extraordinary. Who's been using the tool the most might surprise you, though. It's the demographic that stayed home on Election Day in 2008. But will increased awareness increase voter turnout? Ioana Remiliotis looks at Canada's curious and confused young voters.
got the power. Hey, yeah.
It's the ideal, and it's gone viral. Images of young people so excited, so enamored even with voting. They're literally racing to the polls. At Western in London, Ontario, students are planning the next one.
There's around 1,000 youth gathering.
And what they hope will be the best mob vote yet.
I've seen the numbers just constantly grow every day. The Facebook page for our event has only been up for 4 or 5 days, and we've got over 1,000 people. Things like that are happening all over Canada, and that's got to mean something.
1,003.
It is remarkable how fast the message has spread to a population among the least likely to vote.
There you guys.
A message that's all about getting young people to exercise their political clout.
So there's 3 ways to vote: by special ballot, advanced poll, or on May 2nd, Election Day. I was wondering if you were planning on voting in the federal election this year.
Yes.
You are? Awesome. Cool.
Students say it's a sign that this election is different, that this time young people are more aware of how much their vote can count. That is, if they actually cast a ballot.
Cool. Do you guys know who you're voting for and all that yet, or are you still doing?
Because herein lies the paradox. Social media may have captured young people's voting imagination more than ever. But when it comes to making informed choices, the learning curve is still steep.
I don't know what difference it will make. I feel like I don't know shit.
Some of their first time voting in an election. This will be the first time they've had to make a decision between, am I liberal, am I conservative, what party do I want to vote for, do I agree with the Green, do I agree with, NDP.
That's pretty much what a popular election tool featured on the CBC's website suggests. Vote Compass helps people see which party best represents their views by answering a series of statements ranging from employment insurance to Senate reform. Of the nearly 1.6 million responses already compiled, people 18 to 24 were the most likely to complete the survey. They were also the most likely to say, I don't know, to where they stand on some political issues.
We've seen the vote mob videos, Facebook groups, hundreds of thousands of students pledging to vote. Websites created YouTube videos. Will any of this actually matter, though? Yeah.
The difference with this election is young people are speaking up and we're talking to each other.
Curious and confused.
And when looking to the leaders of the political parties, most of the messages they're spreading are pretty negative, and I think that we're getting sick of it.
At a special Much Music taping about the youth vote, more than 100 people braved a cold, rainy night to take part in a discussion about voting.
Politicians aren't going to talk to young people unless they think that there's something to be gained from that. So if young people
Many to say the big problem is politicians don't speak to them.
We want to be spoken to about the issue specifically. We want to be engaged when we watch the debates. We don't want to, when tuition comes up, they're speaking to our parents about tuition fees. What about the impact it has on us?
Ear-splitting. It's one way to describe the scene at Horizon's basement headquarters. The full-time dream for this young band is to make it big. But here's one way to turn down the volume.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about Senate reform?
What is that?
You never think about it, you don't talk about it, it's just not in your...
If something's not right in front of my face or it's nothing that's really related to me, then I'm not so interested.
Like I'm completely uninformed right now. Let's say you go to university and you have a part-time job. Well, you're so caught up in that and you're not thinking about, one day I'm going to have a family, one day I'm going to have, a down payment, like a car, my health's going to be, you're always thinking that your parents are going to take care of it.
But there's a sense that it's time to grow up, politically anyway.
Are all of you guys planning to vote?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah? Okay.
But I couldn't go right now and vote because it would just be like, I like this guy's face. But yeah, I definitely am going to vote, and I'm going to look more into all the topics there.
It's important for young people to have a say, just because we are the future.
The more I read about it and the more I look into it, it makes more sense to me that, wow, I need to be a part of this and I need to have my say.
3. It's vote day, vote day.
Back at Western, the jingle is a little more gentle.
Parties and parties and parties.
But the hope is the same. That this vote day will be the one where more people will say they had their say.
Vote, vote, looking forward to the election.
Joanna Brumiliotis, CBC News, London, Ontario.